In the ancient and complex land of the Middle East, there are two countries that are not far apart, yet live as if they are two completely different species. One is so small in land area that you need a magnifying glass to find it on the map. It lacks oil and minerals, yet it has become a global technology giant. The other is large in area and rich in resources, but has been surrounded by various sanctions for decades. Despite this, it has managed to establish an industrial and military system that its opponents dare not underestimate. Yes, today we are talking about Israel and Iran. These two names are almost always associated with words like conflict, missiles, and nuclear crisis. But have you ever wondered what is truly driving them beneath these surface level conflicts? If we say that countries have their own operating systems, what would the system core of these two countries look like? What kind of underlying logic do they use to write every application from education and technology to national defense? This is the secret we are going to explore together today. We are not discussing those fleeting headlines. What we aim to do is act like detectives, obtaining the design blueprints of these two countries, dismantling them piece by piece to see how the gears and circuits inside are actually designed. When we piece these fragments together, the scene you will see is more complex and profound than you might imagine. To understand a country, you must first comprehend its top-level design, which is its national survival strategy. For Israel and Iran, they face the same fundamental question, how to survive and thrive in a hostile environment, yet the answers they provide have led them to two completely opposite extremes. First, let's take a look at Israel. You might have heard the term startup nation. This is not just the title of a best-selling book, it is essentially Israel's national strategic declaration. The core idea of this strategy is very straightforward. Since we don't have God-given natural resources, we will turn ourselves into a resource, one that the entire world cannot do without the most valuable resource: human intelligence and creativity. This idea might sound a bit strange, right? How can a country turn itself into a resource? That's precisely what makes it interesting. Israel's answer is to transform the entire nation into a massive, never-ending innovation incubator. The data speaks for itself. By early 2009, there were 63 Israeli companies listed on the Nasdaq in the United States, more than Canada, Japan, and China combined. This is not a coincidence. It is the result of a carefully crafted plan. So, how did this culture of nationwide innovation come about? In Israel, most young people, regardless of gender, are required to serve in the military. However, the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, is not just a combat organization. It is more like the country's largest entrepreneurship preparatory class and CEO training center. In the military, young people are given significant responsibilities. They are encouraged to think independently, adapt to changing circumstances, and even break the rules when necessary. The organizational structure here is very flat. A young officer in their early 20s can directly call a general by name, and if they believe the general's orders are problematic, they can and should bring it up face to face. This culture is referred to as chutzpah. The word is difficult to translate, somewhat akin to fortune favors the bold, embodying the courage to challenge authority, question conventions, and attempt the impossible. One could say that the IDF is like cultural software installing the chutzpah program into the minds of every young Israeli. So when an Israeli youth completes their military service, they may have already managed a team, operated equipment worth millions of dollars, and made life and death decisions under extreme pressure. Isn't this the very quality that entrepreneurs need the most? More critically, the strategy is entirely outward-looking. Israel is well aware that it cannot survive on its small market alone. Therefore, its goal is to deeply embed itself into the global economic chain. They have attracted tech giants like Google, Meta, and Nvidia to establish R&D centers, and the ultimate goal of local startups is often to be acquired at a high price by an international company, achieving a perfect technology monetization. There is actually a deeper logic hidden within. In most countries, civilian technology develops first, and then the military comes in to procure and apply it. However, in Israel, this process is reversed. The military, especially elite intelligence units like Unit 8200, serves as a technology incubator. It not only fosters cutting-edge technology, but more importantly, cultivates top-tier technical talent. These veterans, armed with technology and experience, go on to establish the next world-shocking tech companies. This creates a unique cycle. The nation's security agencies directly fuel the country's economic engine. Israel's economic lifeline is inextricably linked with its defense system. This means that Israel's economic model is inherently a dual-use strategy. Every cybersecurity company and every AI algorithm could potentially be used in warfare in the next moment. This makes its economy exceptionally resilient in the face of certain shocks, but it also makes it extremely sensitive to any geopolitical turbulence that might affect the security environment. After looking at Israel, we turn our attention to Iran. If Israel's strategy is to go out, then Iran's strategy is to close the door and strengthen itself from within. This strategy also has a specific name called resistance economy. The term resilient economy was first introduced by Iran's supreme leader Khamenei in 2011 as a response to increasingly severe economic sanctions from the West. You might think of it as a last resort or a sign of failure. However, if we delve into its essence, you'll find that it is actually a proactive national project with a comprehensive theoretical framework. Its core objectives are very clear: reduce dependency on oil exports, achieve self-sufficiency in essential goods by relying on domestic capabilities, vigorously develop a knowledge-based economy to arm itself with its own technology. In simple terms, the goal is to transform Iran's economy into an impregnable fortress, a resilient and self-sufficient system designed to build immunity against sanctions from the international community. In Iran's official discourse, this effort is understood as a form of jihad spirit. This is not merely a religiously tinged battle, but a state of nationwide mobilization, hard work, and overcoming challenges. This is Iran's response to the economic sanctions imposed by the West. It calls upon the entire nation to fight for the survival and dignity of the people. This strategy has indeed achieved some visible results. For instance, some assessments suggest that domestically produced goods in Iran can now replace up to 70% of imported products. It has also, to some extent, driven the Iranian economy to shift from being highly dependent on the oil industry to focusing more on the service sector and local technology. However, this model is also under immense pressure. Currency collapse, frighteningly high inflation, and factories halting production due to energy shortages are all harsh realities under the resistance economy halo. The resistance economy is like a seasoned warrior. Despite having strong capabilities, it is constantly besieged by opponents, engaging in tough battles, and struggling between ideal goals and the harsh realities it faces. Behind this also lies a deeper logic. Iran's resistance economy is not just an economic policy, it is a highly sophisticated political governance tool. It cleverly transforms the immense external pressure into a slogan that unites internally and consolidates the regime. When economic hardships are portrayed as a patriotic battle against foreign enemies, it becomes easier for the government to justify implementing austerity measures, tightening control over national resources, and suppressing any dissent. Any complaints or dissenting voices can be seen as unpatriotic or accused of aiding the enemy. Another effect of this pattern is that it establishes a system that prioritizes ideological purity and regime survival over the well-being of the populace and economic efficiency. This may sound harsh, but it is precisely what makes the regime exceptionally resilient. While the country's economy may continuously wither and deteriorate on the fringes, the core of the nation, holding the banner of resistance, can persist. This is because the measure of its success is not how much GDP has grown, but how many rounds of sanctions it has withstood and how many crises it has endured. In summary, Israel and Iran represent two different approaches. One chooses to tie its fate to the entire world, while the other opts to shut the world out. These two distinct survival philosophies naturally shape their completely different talent cultivation models. If national strategy is the blueprint, then the education system is the factory that produces the talent needed for this blueprint. The educational philosophies of Israel and Iran, much like their national strategies, are distinct. One looks outward, the other inward. One seeks precision, the other breadth. Let's first take a look at Israel, where its education system harbors a very interesting paradox. On one hand, Israel's investment in education is quite astonishing. According to a report by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, Israel's education expenditure accounts for 6.1% of its gross domestic product (GDP), ranking among the top in all developed countries. On the other hand, this costly system is fraught with issues. For instance, the starting salary for teachers in Israel was once far below the OECD average, and the social status of teachers is also quite low. In Israeli schools, the average class size is 28 students, which is much more crowded compared to the OECD average of 23 students. What's more concerning is that in international standardized tests like PISA and TIMSS, Israeli students' math and science scores have significantly declined over the past few decades, dropping from the top ranks in the world to a mid-level position. Hearing this, you might be wondering, isn't this contradictory? Spending the most money to achieve the worst results? How can a failing education system give rise to the myth of the startup nation? Are the world's top tech talents just falling from the sky? This is precisely the key to unraveling this paradox. Israel is not actually running a single education system, but rather two. One is the public education system aimed at the general population, which indeed has various issues. The other is a parallel, highly resource concentrated super elite selection system. The sole goal of this elite system is to act like a talent scout, identifying the brightest minds early on and putting them on a special fast track. What is this fast track? It is, as mentioned earlier, the military. Many of Israel's top young talents actually begin their elite education after graduating from high school. For instance, when they are between 16 and 18 years old, there are special extracurricular programs that teach them computer programming and hacking skills. These programs are essentially preparatory classes for elite military technology units, such as the renowned Unit 8200, to pre-select and train talent. So the entire logic chain is as follows. Israel's education system is like a massive funnel. It may not perform well in universal education, but at the bottom of the funnel there is an extremely efficient filter. This filter accurately identifies the most promising talents and then immerses them into the nation's core security and technology engines for intensive development. The myth of the startup nation is not created by the average output of Israel's education system, but is supported by the top-tier output of its elite track. There is also an interesting detail regarding gender differences. Data shows that among young Israeli women aged 25 to 34, 56% have obtained higher education diplomas, while the percentage for men is only 36%. This gap is much larger than the OECD average. However, paradoxically, women with higher education earn, on average, only 69% of what their male counterparts with the same level of education earn. The complex social and cultural reasons behind this will not be discussed today, but it does reveal that this seemingly modern society still bears deep traditional imprints. This dual-track education model also plants a seed of concern for Israel's future. If the level of public education continues to decline, will the talent pool available for the elite track also shrink? When the strategy of selecting top talent fails to attract enough high-quality individuals, can the Startup Nation engine continue to advance with such strong momentum? We will discuss this issue another time. Iran's educational model can be described as a mirror image of Israel's. It does not aim to cultivate a few top geniuses who can change the world. Instead, its goal is to conduct a people's war of knowledge, massively and systematically training countless engineers and technicians capable of supporting the edifice of a resistance economy. Iran's education system is highly centralized, with all public schools and universities directly managed by government departments. From elementary to middle school, education is free and compulsory, resulting in an almost 100% enrollment rate for school-aged children. This flood irrigation style of educational investment has yielded remarkable results. Iran's overall literacy rate has reached 85.5%, and among young people aged 15 to 24, this figure has soared to 98.1%. This means that in just one generation, Iran has essentially eradicated illiteracy among young adults, completing the initial accumulation of human capital. This is an impressive achievement. Judging by Iran's research output concentrated in engineering and material science, and the presence of its universities on global rankings, its higher education is evidently heavily skewed towards science and engineering. To some extent, today's Iran is producing a large number of higher education graduates. Of course, this model also has its costs. In various world university rankings, Iran's top universities, such as the Tehran University of Medical Sciences, although listed, usually rank behind the top institutions in Israel and Saudi Arabia. This reflects that Iran's educational strategy prioritizes quantity and meeting domestic needs over competing for global reputation at the pinnacle of the pyramid. This choice is entirely aligned with its national strategy. The core of the resistance economy is self-reliance, and what does self-reliance require? It requires a vast number of local, obedient, and combat-ready technical workers, engineers, and scientists. Through this total mobilization style of education, Iran precisely provides such a massive industrial army. It is this army that enables Iran, under comprehensive blockade, to independently develop industrial catalysts, manufacture drones and ballistic missiles, and conduct cutting-edge biomedical research such as tissue engineering. Therefore, Iran's educational strategy is also a form of asymmetric strategy. It may not produce as many Nobel laureates who can publish in top journals like Nature and Science as Israel does, but it has indeed successfully established a vast and resilient human resource foundation. This foundation is sufficient to support it in a long-term attritional strategic confrontation, preventing the collapse of the entire system due to the loss or targeted elimination of a few elite talents. Two educational philosophies have shaped two completely different types of talent. These individuals then enter their respective national laboratories, creating two entirely different scientific landscapes. Now, let's talk about their laboratories. We are going to delve into the core innovation areas of these two countries. What exactly are the minds nurtured by the education system researching? And how does their research serve the national blueprint? In Israel, the research model can be summarized as application-driven basic research. The simplest way to understand this is that although they are engaged in cutting-edge, fundamental scientific exploration, from the moment a project is initiated, they have already considered where this research can be applied in the future, what kind of product it can become, and how much it can sell for. The entire research ecosystem in Israel functions like a highly integrated global engine. The barriers between academia and high-tech startups are almost transparent here. An idea from a professor might still be in the lab today, but by tomorrow it could have secured venture capital and transformed into a new company. This is a highway from basic discovery to market application, and it's the kind that never gets congested, operating 24/7. Let's look at a few specific examples to feel the rhythm of this fast and furious pace. The first example, which best embodies the characteristics of Israeli research, is the combination of AI and biology. Researchers at Tel Aviv University have developed an AI tool called SNET. It can analyze vast amounts of single-cell genetic data and, like a superfilter, remove a lot of noise and useless information, allowing scientists to see those extremely subtle but crucial life signals. For instance, using this tool, they successfully discovered how immune T cells in cancer patients are activated after treatment, enabling them to attack tumors more effectively. This is a typical example of the Israeli model. They leverage their absolute advantage in computer science and artificial intelligence to equip their equally advanced life sciences research with a super accelerator. AI technology has accelerated discoveries in biology, and the vast and complex data generated in biological research, in turn, provides the perfect target range for the development and training of AI algorithms. This creates a powerful self-reinforcing AI biology flywheel. The second example comes from the field of quantum computing. We all know that quantum computing has enormous potential to change the future, but it has a fatal weakness. Qubits are too fragile and prone to errors. A startup company, Kedma, born from research at the Hebrew University, specializes in developing next-generation quantum error correction software. Most astonishingly, this cutting-edge technology was quickly integrated into the tech giant IBM's Qiskit software package, providing services to users worldwide. From an algorithm in a university lab to a product feature of a global business giant, the speed is simply astonishing. The third example further illustrates their application-driven mindset. Scientists at the Weizmann Institute of Science are researching a very fundamental biological question: how do cells handle internal waste? They discovered that a system in cells called a proteasome produces small protein fragments when breaking down old proteins. However, further research revealed that these fragments are actually natural antibiotics that can directly kill bacteria. This discovery not only overturns our traditional understanding of cell functions, but more importantly, immediately opens a new path to combat the increasingly severe problem of antibiotic resistance. If we look at these examples together, we find that whether it's AI tools, quantum software, or natural antibiotics, these studies follow the same pattern. Basic scientific questions are the starting point of research, but the endpoint of research results is always closely linked to a huge, real, high-value application scenario. This model makes Israeli scientific research not just about creating knowledge, but about creating future markets and strategic high grounds. It targets the most core tracks in the future economy: artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and personalized medicine. Its goal is not just to sell products, but to become the technology foundation of these future industries, much like Intel Inside in the computer era, making the world unable to do without Israeli technology in the most critical fields of the future. This is a highly aggressive scientific strategy focused on long-term technological dominance. Now, let's turn our attention to Iran's laboratories. The atmosphere here is completely different from that of Israel. If Israel's labs resemble a bustling super incubator aimed at the global market, then Iran's labs are more like a quiet, strategic arsenal serving the nation. Iran's research model can be defined as a national resilience framework. Here, scientific research is primarily a national strategic tool. Its foremost task is not to ring the bell at Nasdaq or publish a few papers in Nature, but to solve the country's most urgent life and death issues, providing technological support for a resistance economy and forging an indestructible technological shield for the nation when isolated. Let's look at a few examples. The first, and the field where Iran invests the most, is materials science and industrial chemistry. What are Iranian scientists extensively researching in highly cited papers? Industrial catalysts, energy storage materials, and advanced coatings. These may not sound as flashy as AI or quantum computing, but think about what they mean for a sanctioned country. Researching catalysts is about improving the efficiency of the domestic chemical industry, such as how to more efficiently convert methanol into propylene, which is the foundation of modern industry. Researching energy storage materials like supercapacitors is about developing the country's own energy storage technology, crucial for energy independence and renewable energy. Researching advanced coatings is about providing better protection for aircraft and automotive parts, enhancing the level of domestic manufacturing. These research choices are not random, but are strongly problem-oriented. They precisely address Iran's critical issues in the industrial, energy, and defense sectors. This is an extremely practical research approach. The second example is in the biomedical field. Unlike Israel's startup-oriented model, Iran's efforts in biomedicine are more state-driven. The most striking is its tissue engineering industry. Centered around the Royan Institute, Iran has established a comprehensive medical system using stem cell technology to treat burns and repair cartilage, and it can even produce biological implants for heart valve repair. The logic behind this is also self-sufficiency. Under sanctions, many advanced medical products and technologies cannot be imported. Therefore, Iran has no choice but to produce them itself. This is not only a scientific advancement, but also a strategic measure to ensure the health and safety of the citizens in a special environment. The third example better reflects the national will of Iranian science. Tehran University of Medical Sciences spearheaded a project called the Tehran Cohort Study. This is a large-scale, long-term public health research project aimed at tracking the health status of 50 families in Tehran. The goal is to understand the epidemiological characteristics of major health threats like cardiovascular and mental diseases. This is a typical big science project led by the government. Its purpose is not to publish a paper, but to provide the most solid, localized data foundation for Iran to formulate national health policies and conduct disease prevention. This approach treats scientific research as a direct tool for enhancing national welfare and governance capabilities. To give you a more intuitive understanding of the differences between these two models, I have organized a table. Through this table, we can clearly see that Iran's scientific research is a form of asymmetric science. It does not attempt to compete with Israel or the West on all fronts. Instead, it focuses its limited resources highly on areas that can provide the greatest strategic leverage for its resistance economy and national security. This model may not produce world-stunning technological stars in the short term, but it is building an extremely resilient technological foundation for Iran, one that is tailor-made according to its national conditions. This foundation makes the country more difficult to be completely crushed under extreme external pressure. Both scientific strategies will ultimately transform into the most hardcore strength, military power. Now, we arrive at the most hardcore part. Previously, we discussed national blueprints, educational models, and research directions, all of which ultimately materialize into the most hardware aspects of weapons and military forces. The military philosophies of Israel and Iran are the ultimate manifestations of their national philosophies. One pursues extreme technology, building an impregnable technical expert. The other deeply studies the realities of the situation as an asymmetric strategist. Israel's military strategy can be summarized in two words: defense and intelligence. Its core logic is to establish an almost impenetrable defense system through unparalleled technological superiority, while also possessing an invisible, omnipresent digital ghost to conduct precise intelligence gathering and surgical strikes. Defense system: the multi-layered Iron Dome. Let's first look at its defense system, known as the Multi-Layered Air Defense System, or the Iron Dome. It functions like a massive sieve filtering threats from afar to near. Outer layer, Arrow System. The outermost and highest layer is the Arrow System, developed jointly with the United States to intercept long-range ballistic missiles. It has two versions. Arrow 2 intercepts within the atmosphere, while Arrow 3 is even more formidable, capable of exiting the atmosphere to destroy incoming missiles in space through hit-to-kill methods. By the end of 2023, it successfully intercepted a missile launched by Yemen's Houthi forces in space, marking the first true space battle in human history. Middle layer, David Sling. The middle layer is called David Sling, named after the biblical story of David defeating the giant Goliath with a sling. Its mission is to intercept medium-range missiles, cruise missiles, and large rockets, filling the defense gap between the Arrow and Iron Dome systems. Inner layer, Iron Dome. The innermost and most famous layer is the Iron Dome, Israel's star product designed to counter short-range rockets with ranges between 4 to 70 kilometers, typically launched from Gaza and Lebanon. It consists of a series of mobile launchers with reaction times measured in seconds, boasting an interception success rate of over 90%. Future layer, Iron Beam. A future layer in development is the Iron Beam, a directed energy weapon or laser weapon. Its revolutionary aspect is cost. While launching an interceptor missile from the Arrow or Iron Dome is extremely expensive, costing tens of thousands to even millions of dollars, firing a laser from the Iron Beam could cost only a few dollars. Once mature and deployed, it will completely change the cost dynamics of defensive warfare. From space to the ground, from long-range missiles to homemade rockets, Israel has woven a seamless Skynet with technology. Offensive capabilities. The digital ghost, however, having a shield is not enough. A spear is also necessary. Israel's sharpest spear is the mysterious unit 8200 mentioned multiple times earlier. This unit is considered one of the world's top technical intelligence agencies, comparable in capability to the United States' National Security Agency, NSA, albeit on a smaller scale. It is not only a master of signal intelligence and code breaking, but also a pioneer in cyber warfare. It is believed that the Stuxnet virus, which crippled Iran's nuclear facilities, was its creation. More frighteningly, Unit 8200 has deeply embraced artificial intelligence. Investigations show it is using massive data obtained from monitoring Palestinians to train its AI language models. This AI can quickly analyze, translate, and summarize intercepted communications, automatically generating lists of suspects, greatly enhancing intelligence analysis and target identification efficiency. According to a former commander, 90% of Israel's intelligence comes from Unit 8200. This digital ghost gives Israel a god's eye view of its adversaries' every move. The cost of high-tech defense, of course, maintaining such a high-tech military system comes at an extremely high cost. In 2024, Israel's military expenditure soared by 65%, reaching an astonishing $46.5 billion, accounting for 8.8% of its GDP. This is a terrifying figure, meaning that for every $10 of wealth created by the country, nearly $1 is invested in defense. However, Israel's technological deterrence logic is also creating a paradox. The more successful its defense system is, the more. Now let's look at Iran. Iran is well aware that it has a technological gap compared to Israel in cutting-edge technology. Therefore, it never attempts to compete head-on with Israel in technology, but instead chooses a completely different path of asymmetric warfare. This path is also built on two main pillars: swarm tactics and the nuclear threshold. Swarm tactics. The core of this tactic is to use a large number of relatively inexpensive weapons to launch saturation attacks, causing Israel's expensive and sophisticated defense systems to overload and crash due to too many targets. The main force of Iran's swarm consists of its drones and ballistic missiles. According to assessments, Iran possesses the largest arsenal of missiles and drones in the Middle East. Its strategy is to launch so-called firepower strikes, combining cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and drones to surge towards targets like waves, one after another. Iran's arsenal short-range ballistic missiles, such as the Fateh 110 and Zolfagar, capable of precise strikes on regional targets. Medium-range ballistic missiles, such as the Shahab 3 series and its improved versions Ghada and Imad, with ranges sufficient to cover the entire territory of Israel. It is estimated that Iran's total stockpile of ballistic missiles could be as high as 30 drones. The star product is the Shahid series. These drones are low-cost, easy to produce, and have been extensively tested in combat on the Ukrainian battlefield, proving their effectiveness. Iran's military spending forms a stark contrast with Israel's. Due to long-term sanctions, Iran's official military expenditure is much lower, even dropping to $7.9 billion in 2024. This highlights the cost-effectiveness of its asymmetric strategy. Using inexpensive drones to deplete your costly interceptors is a calculation Iran has made very precisely. The nuclear threshold, however, having only the swarm is not enough for Iran to rest easy. It also needs an ultimate life-saving card, which is its nuclear program, or what we call the nuclear threshold. Current status: Iran is currently producing enriched uranium with a purity of up to 60%. To produce weapons-grade enriched uranium, a purity of 90% is required, while civilian nuclear power plants only need 3.67%. Therefore, 60% purity has almost no reasonable explanation other than military purposes. Technically, moving from 60 to 90% is very close. Breakout time military experts estimate that the time Iran needs to produce enough weapons-grade material for one nuclear bomb, known as breakout time, is now almost zero. The International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) estimates that Iran's existing nuclear material, if further enriched, would be enough to produce 9 nuclear weapons. Stockpile and production capacity: as of May 2025, Iran's total enriched uranium stockpile has exceeded 9,200 kilograms, and it can produce about 37.5 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium each month. Loss of oversight: the IAEA admits that it has lost continuity of knowledge regarding key aspects of Iran's nuclear program, such as the production and stockpile of centrifuges. This means the IAEA can no longer guarantee that Iran's nuclear program is entirely peaceful. Iran is likely secretly manufacturing and storing more advanced centrifuges in a hidden location, preparing to establish a secret nuclear facility. When we look at the swarm tactics and the nuclear threshold together, Iran's strategic intentions become very clear. Its nuclear program is not just a last resort defensive weapon, it is also an offensive tool. It provides a massive umbrella for Iran's conventional military forces and asymmetric strike capabilities. Consider this: when a country is already standing on the nuclear threshold, any nation contemplating action against it must weigh the consequences. Would a large-scale conventional airstrike provoke it to tear off its disguise completely, cross the finish line, and build an atomic bomb? This enormous uncertainty greatly restrains the opponent's actions. It is precisely this nuclear umbrella that emboldens Iran's proxy forces such as Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthi rebels in Yemen, as well as its own drone and missile units, to take more provocative actions in the region. Iran's calculation is that as long as nuclear deterrence remains, opponents will not dare to escalate the conflict to a level that threatens the survival of the Iranian regime. Therefore, the greatest strategic value of Iran's nuclear program at this stage may not be in possessing a nuclear bomb itself, but in maintaining this ambiguous state of "I can have a nuclear bomb at any time," and the deterrent effect it brings. It gives Iran a huge bargaining chip and puts its enemies in a dilemma. Two kinds of warfare are two survival logics have brought the Middle East to an extremely dangerous crossroads. So, in the next decade, where will the fate of these two arch enemies lead? For complex countries like Israel and Iran, any prediction is akin to walking a tightrope. However, based on our previous analysis, we can still attempt to outline the challenges and choices they are most likely to face in the next decade. Israel's tightrope. Can the miracle continue? The startup nation model has undoubtedly been a tremendous success over the past few decades, but now, this miracle itself is facing severe tests regarding sustainability. First challenge: talent bottleneck. As mentioned earlier, Israel's tech miracle is largely supported by top talent cultivated through its elite education track. However, reports indicate that in 2024, Israel's tech industry employment numbers will see their first decline in over a decade. Particularly in non-RD roles such as product, data, and business operations, there is a significant talent gap. Additionally, integrating groups such as women, Arabs, and ultra-Orthodox Jews into the high-tech industry remains a huge challenge. If the source of living water for talent dries up, the foundation of the startup nation will be shaken. Second challenge: overconcentration of industry. Israel's economy heavily relies on a few pillars, especially cybersecurity. This is akin to putting all eggs in one basket. Although efforts are being made to diversify into fields like health tech, climate tech, and food tech, this process needs to accelerate. Otherwise, if the core industries face global market fluctuations, the entire national economy could suffer a severe blow. Third challenge: disconnect between strategy and execution. Israel never lacks great innovative ideas and policies, but bureaucracy and a lack of coordination between the government and industry often lead to these good policies not being effectively implemented. An ironic phenomenon is that while Israel can develop world-class technology, many of its basic public services, such as opening a bank account, remain inefficient and not highly digitized. Final and fundamental challenge: geopolitical risk. This long-standing, high-intensity conflict state brings enormous uncertainty to the economy and constantly tests the confidence of global investors. Therefore, Israel's future fate depends on whether it can successfully transition from a startup nation to a scale-up nation. This means it must resolve the paradox in education and expand its talent base. It must cut down on the red tape that hinders business development. It must successfully achieve economic diversification. Its greatest dilemma lies in how to maintain its survival-dependent innovation advantage while bearing the enormous economic and social costs brought by its endless security and defense needs. There is a risk that the model that once made it strong, with its extreme focus on elite technology and security, might eventually become a gilded cage, limiting its potential for broader economic and social development. Let's take another look at Iran. The resistance economy strategy has proven to be more resilient than many expected, but it is indeed approaching a critical point. The current Iranian regime is facing a historic trilemma. Firstly, there is immense economic pressure. A new round of sanctions, continuously devaluing currency, an inflation rate exceeding 30%, and a heavy reliance on China for oil exports are collectively squeezing the country's survival space from within. Secondly, there is a shrinking external strategic space. The painstakingly cultivated network of proxies across the Middle East, known as the Axis of Resistance, has shown cracks under various attacks, weakening Iran's ability to project influence through proxies. This internal and external predicament has pushed Iran to the edge of a decision-making cliff. It has three choices, each of which will alter the course of history. Compromise: return to the negotiating table and exchange concessions on the nuclear program for the lifting of sanctions. This is rational economically, but could be seen ideologically as a surrender, undermining the regime's legitimacy. Collapse: the resistance economy ultimately becomes unsustainable, leading to large-scale social unrest and even threatening the regime's survival. Sprint: the regime decides that the only way to ensure security is to fully cross the nuclear threshold and develop usable nuclear weapons. They might gamble that once the deed is done, the world will be forced to accept a nuclear-armed Iran. In fact, the Iranian parliament is already drafting a bill to withdraw from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Thus, Iran is trapped in a strategic pitfall of its own making. The resistance economy allows it to survive but not to thrive. The nuclear program provides deterrence but also ensures its isolation. Looking ahead, the most likely scenario is the continuation of the current high-risk state. While enduring significant economic pain, Iran cautiously advances its nuclear program to maintain leverage and strives to avoid a full-scale war that could destroy it. However, this system is becoming increasingly fragile. Any major external shock, such as a successful large-scale Israeli airstrike, China completely cutting off oil purchases from Iran, or an uncontrollable nationwide protest, could disrupt this fragile balance and force Iran to make a final decision among those harsh choices. Alright friends, our journey of exploration is nearing its end. We have dissected Israel and Iran, from their national strategies to educational philosophies, and from research models to military ideologies. We have seen that this is not merely a confrontation between two armies, but a clash between two completely different national operating systems. One system is Israel's, whose core is the spirit of chutzpah. Its programming language is globalization and commercial code, and its goal is to become an indispensable node in cyberspace and future technology. It chooses to deeply link with the world, transforming its vulnerabilities into a strength that the world cannot do without. The other system is Iran's, whose core is the belief in resistance. Its programming language is self-reliance and ideology, and its goal is to establish an independent fortress capable of withstanding any external shocks. It chooses to isolate itself from the world, forging its isolation into a resilience that no one can completely destroy. So, in the end, who will win? Is it the nation that bets everything on connecting with the world, or the one that bets everything on resisting the world? The future of the Middle East, and to some extent the future of the world, may depend on the answer to this question. And this answer may not be written by soldiers on the battlefield, but more so by the programmers in Tel Aviv, the engineers in Tehran, and the unwavering beliefs that drive them all. The ultimate question we are left with is, in this turbulent 21st century, which national operating system is truly designed for endurance?